Greetings, Grace Church. Grace and peace to you. I was planning on making a video last week, another State of the Church update, but as many of you know, our daughter went in for an appendectomy, and the recovery process was longer than we were expecting. In fact, we were not expecting another week in front of us, and yet things really changed earlier on this week, and the recovery really took a turn for the better. We believe God answered prayer and that God worked there, and we were able to bring her home yesterday. We got released at noon. So thankful for your cards and encouragements and prayers and meals. All those things have contributed to blessing the Philia family. So appreciative of you, Grace Church, and just good to be home. Wanted to talk about the survey that was taken a few weeks ago, and in particular, one of the things I wanted to start with was it was one of the very final answers that was written in, so you know who you are, whoever wrote this. But the person basically was asking a question about the church leadership and whether we were united in moving forward with the Grace reopening and considering the different political opinions that are out there. I can say right now, from what I'm seeing in the recent elder meeting we had, I could say that we're very much united in how we're moving forward with this. We are talking about all the different ins and outs of looking at reopening, and I'm seeing a lot of unity there. I do want to talk to you, though, and that kind of reminded me I wanted to talk pastorally again about that particular issue and authority. Romans 13 is a very familiar passage, and it says this: "Everyone must submit to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist are instituted by God. So then, the one who resists the authority is opposing God's command, and those who oppose it will bring judgment on themselves." So, when I read that, a few things. First of all, God's the one that instituted the authorities, so I'm going to respect those authorities, and I think that applies in this case. It's one thing to have different opinions and convictions and even make statements about the current things that are happening in Illinois and in our country right now. That's one thing. It's another thing to say we're going to resist the authorities and the orders that they give. I think those are two different things. There should be a place for discussion and even a place for calling on authorities to make wise and godly decisions. I'm reminded, just read an article a few days ago by Ed Stetzer from Wheaton College, Dr. Stetzer, where he basically asked the governor, so why is Costco open but churches are not? I think we all kind of feel that, don't we, in some sense? Like, why is it this way? At the same time, I say, the orders we've received are for the safety and health of other people. And at some level, I can go with that, right? Again, I can't predict the future as far as will the government cross an ethical line or a moral line, a biblical line. And if they do, we will have to answer that question for ourselves. And really, the verse that comes to mind is Acts 5:29. We ought to obey God rather than man. In that context, that passage, Peter and the other apostles have been proclaiming the resurrection of the dead in the temple courts. They're proclaiming Christ. And the religious leaders are furious. They actually want to kill them. And they get together and they hear that famous line of that they must obey God rather than man. That's what Peter and the apostles say. In that case, it's a clear violation of religious freedom. It's clearly persecution. It's clearly offending the God who commissioned these apostles to make disciples of all nations. So in that case, it's like, well, yeah, you've crossed the line and we're going to obey God rather than man. Normally, though, you would hope that obeying the government is a form of obeying God. And so as I think about this, I would still advocate for us to be submitting to the governing authorities. And we might debate whether they've crossed a line, and it may come to the point where they clearly cross a line. But until that day, let's continue to obey them, and even so, obey the Lord as we obey them. Secondly, the survey itself. A lot of helpful information here. I will link to the questions and the charts that came with it. I'm not going to link to the lengthier, part of all the different responses, the fill in the blank ones. I won't link to those, but everything else should be available to you to see as far as how this all came down. A few things on the survey. By the way, thank you. 117 of you took it. Very thankful for that. Question 1 says, when the local government lifts its ban on attending church, what describes your attitude towards returning to worship? Or whenever they lift the guidance they've given to churches, what describes your attitude? And the answers here were, basically the first 2 answers were the most popular. 74% of you said, I will return at the first opportunity we have, or I will return with some precautions and some concerns. But about 3/4 said, yes, I will return with or without precautions. I will plan on returning. Really helpful for us to know that. By the way, there's no issue if you were one of the 26% that said you won't be returning right away. No issue there. I mean, you have to be responsible for your health and your safety. But it's good for us to know as we plan ahead. Another question I will call your attention to was question number 4. And I do this because this was the fill in the blank one. What precautions could Grace Church take that might make you comfortable during our worship services? A lot of responses there. A lot of them kind of came from question 3, the personal precautions you might take, and they kind of drop down into question 4. But I want to read a couple things to you. There were a number of you that said things like this. I will be comfortable with or without safety precautions. Or this one, the option of social distancing in the worship service for people who think it's necessary. Or this one, hand sanitizer available, conscious spacing if desired. Or have people sit further apart for extra precautions and to help those feeling nervous be more comfortable. Or this one, this is the last one I'll read. Allow people to spread out, encourage mutual respect if others in the congregation differ in opinions on these matters. Don't joke about it. If folks have concerns but are made to feel uncomfortable, likely they won't be back. And I just want to say, I think that captures very clearly this idea that Grace Church is a people that are gracious to others. It's a considering others more important than themselves, submitting to one another. It's that kind of mentality that I think makes Grace Church a beautiful church and a beautiful people. Yes, we might have different opinions on these things. We might see things different politically, but end of the day, I'm considering what you need. I'm respecting your opinion, and let's move forward together. And I think that captures in a really powerful way where we're at as a church. And I think that will take us a long way as well. The other thing I'll call out, a lot of you said you would return to small group when you can. I think twice as many of you said that you'd return to small group at the first opportunity. And then finally, I'll call your attention to number 8. How full should the worship service be? Based on recommendations from the local government maybe, or our own recommendations, how full would you feel comfortable? And the majority of you said half full. 43%, almost 44% said half full. 18% said 3/4 full. 17% said all the way full, every seat taken, which that doesn't really happen anyway, right? Every seat is not taken. It'd be great if it was, right? And if you add those together, you got 40, 50, 70, 80, almost 80% of you said, half full would be that lower point, right? And so I think if we're at half full, we're in pretty good shape there. So that was really helpful to see that. So thank you for taking the survey. Thank you for all the gracious responses. Like I say, I will link to this. You can see that a little further if you want to check it out. And just want to say, so happy to be serving you. So happy to hear stories of Grace Church people stepping out and serving other people, helping people move, donating blood this weekend, the food drive this weekend for Oakdale School. Things are happening. God's on the move and using the ministries of Grace Church for His glory and for His kingdom, and to serve other people in love. Let's keep doing that. So may God bless you and may he keep you. May his face shine upon you. God bless you all.